Nick at Nite on your TV dial. You got TV glass, you got TV style. Nothing fits your screen is right. It's Nick at Nite.
Hello and welcome back to Brian Sings That Are Cool. It can't be understated the hold that Nickelodeon had on kids of my generation. So much so that when their daily programming ended, us couch potatoes stuck around for their nighttime block, Nick at Nite. Starting on July 1st, 1985, Nickelodeon would switch over to Nick at Nite at 8 p.m. and aired classic sitcoms, a couple of their own creations, and bumpers all night long, 7 nights a week. Nick at Nite was a nightly celebration of TV Land's past, while also carving out its own identity, and as a kid, shaping my imagination and even my sense of humor. Now we're talking well over 100 shows, so I'm just going to be focusing on ones that really grabbed me as a kid. So, let's start off with a strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane.
It's Superman! Yes, it's Superman!
I've talked a lot about this show on this channel before. I even did a top 10 of my favorite episodes. But I can't do a look back on Nick at Nite without talking about its impact on me. The Adventures of Superman ran for 6 seasons from September 19th, 1952 to April 28th, 1958, and starred George Reeves as Superman, Phyllis Coates and later Noel Neill as Lois Lane, Jack Larson as Jimmy Olsen, and John Hamilton as Perry White. The show followed the exploits of the Man of Steel and his never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way. The show was filmed at a number of studios throughout its run, most notably RKO Studios' Backlot, which would later be used as Mayberry on The Andy Griffith Show. And for its 1955 season, The Adventures of Superman utilized the Charlie Chaplin Studios, which until recently was home to the Jim Henson Company. As with all of the shows they aired, Nick at Nite would share interesting facts about the series between commercials, like pointing out that Clark's glasses didn't have lenses in the early seasons, but did in the later seasons. And even their bumpers would have a little fun with clips from the show, like learning algebra from Superman.
Think you could handle Superman's job? Take this simple Nick at Nite test. Criminal A travels west in a hijacked car at 30 miles per hour. Criminal B attaches X pounds of dynamite to a bridge 15 miles east of Criminal A. Starting at Metropolis and flying at light speed times pi, how do you stop both Criminal A and B? Answer, crash through a wall and bang their heads together. For further study tips, watch The Adventures of Superman, starting Monday at 8:30, 7:30 Central on Nick at Nite.
I've watched all 104 episodes of The Adventures of Superman multiple times, and never get tired of them. I love the dark film noir of the black and white seasons, and the vibrant colored comic book adventure stories of the later seasons. For me, out of all of the actors to don the cape, George Reeves stands on the level of Christopher Reeve. The Adventures of Superman is my #1 comfort show and one of the main reasons I have such fond memories of Nick at Nite. We go from one strange visitor from another planet to an even stranger visitor from another planet. Mork and Mindy ran for 4 seasons on ABC from September 14th, 1978 to May 27th, 1982. The show followed the day-to-day lives of an alien who comes to Earth from the planet Ork and an Earth woman named Mindy, who becomes his roommate, closest friend, and eventually they fall in love. The series starred Robin Williams as Mork, Pam Dauber as Mindy, Conrad Janis as Mindy's father, and Elizabeth Kerr as Mindy's grandmother. Not to mention some hilarious side characters like Robert Donner as Exodore, a crazy man Mork befriends.
I've got to settle down. Got a straight, conventional job.
What do you think you'd like to be?
Emperor of the Earth!
And then in the 4th season, Jonathan Winters came on as Mork and Mindy's son Mirth, as Orkins aged backwards, you see. Though Winters had already appeared in a season 3 episode as Mindy's uncle. It's never really explained why Mork and Mindy's son looks exactly like Mindy's uncle, but given that Mork was the one that laid the egg that hatched into their son, I don't think you're supposed to ask a lot of questions. After the success of Star Wars, producer Gary Marshall wanted to bring an alien into his show Happy Days. So for the 22nd episode of the 5th season, My Favorite Orkin, Richie Cunningham comes face to face with a space alien who wants to bring him back to his home planet Ork as a specimen. Luckily for Richie, the Fonz intervenes. Though initially it copped out with a "it was all a dream" ending, Mork was so popular they filmed an alternate scene where Mork wipes everyone's minds of all the events in the episode. Both Dom DeLuise and Roger Rees, who would later appear together in Mel Brooks' Robin Hood Men in Tights, turned down the role of Mork. But when a then unknown Robin Williams showed up for the audition with Gary Marshall, and Marshall asked him to have a seat, Robin sat face down in the chair. Robin was cast on the spot, with Marshall saying he was the only alien who auditioned. With lovable characters, great writing, and some fantastic improv from one of the masters himself, Robin Williams, I always look forward to catching Mork and Mindy on Nick at Night's lineup. I was such a fan as a kid, I even used my allowance to buy a Mork doll at a flea market. From aliens to spies, it's time to get smart. Get Smart ran for 4 seasons on NBC from September 18th, 1965 to March 29th, 1969. Then it switched networks for its final season, which aired on CBS and ended in 1970, as well as 2 reunion films in the 80s. A spoof of the then popular spy genre, Get Smart followed the misadventures of Secret Agent 86, Maxwell Smart, who worked for a U.S. government counterintelligence agency named Control, and his partner, 99, as they fought against enemy spy organization Chaos. The show starred Don Adams as Max, former top brass pomade model Barbara Feldon as 99.
I want a word with all you tigers. Oh, you men know which ones you are. I like you.
And Rebel Without a Cause's Edward Platt as Max's long-suffering boss, the Chief of Control. And like any good spy spoof, Max always had the most creative gadgets, like the shoe phone, the cone of silence, and of course, Max's 1965 Sunbeam Tiger. Get Smart is one of the earliest pieces of media to shape my sense of humor as a kid, and for good reason. It came from the mind of a comedy legend. In 1965, to capitalize on the popularity of the James Bond films, producer Daniel Melnick reached out to the great Mel Brooks to come up with a parody of the spy genre. Along with Buck Henry, who early SNL fans may recognize as the target of John Belushi's samurai character, the two created a sitcom very different from what was airing at the time. Mel Brooks even said, "No one has ever done a show about an idiot before. I decided to be the first." While Brooks only wrote 3 episodes of Get Smart, his fingerprints are all over it, with some of the most clever one-liners ever uttered. Clearly a huge inspiration for films like Airplane or The Naked Gun.
I'm lucky to be alive. Looks all right to me. Actually, when Penwick got here, he was white.
This place here changes a man.
Oh, yeah, in what way?
I used to be white.
Now, I grew up in the 90s, but I've long considered the 70s and 80s the best time for comedy. An era of geniuses. We've talked about Mork and Mindy, but our next show really cements that belief for me. Taxi ran for 4 seasons on ABC from September 12, 1978 to May 6, 1982. And like Get Smart, switched networks for its final season, which ran on NBC, till June 15, 1983. Taxi is arguably one of the great ensemble sitcoms of all time, with Judd Hirsch as Alex, Mary Lou Henner as Elaine, Tony Danza as Tony, Jeff Conway as Bobby, and probably my 3 favorites, Christopher Lloyd as the burnout Reverend Jim Ignatowski, Danny DeVito as head taxi dispatcher Louis De Palma, and of course the legendary Andy Kaufman as lovable immigrant and mechanic Lodka Gravis. All these hilarious people together in one show telling the story of the everyday lives of taxi drivers and other co-workers for the Sunshine Cab Company in New York City. Everyone here comes together so well, and it's one of only a handful of shows for me that has consistent laugh-out-loud moments throughout.
What does a yellow light mean? Slow down. Okay. What? Yellow light mean? Slow down. Okay. What?
The The cast seemed to have a good working relationship and have all gone on to speak fondly of the show, but that doesn't mean there weren't some interesting backstage moments. The most famous one coming from Andy Kaufman. Andy wasn't all that big on sitcoms, but accepted the role after his manager talked him into it after getting the network to agree to his demands. Andy would only appear in half the episodes per season, and they had to agree to at least 4 guest appearances for Tony Clifton. Tony was a loud, abrasive, audience-abusing lounge singer and was played by Andy himself for his comedy act, though he'd never admit it. It all came to a head at the taping of Tony's first episode, Season 1, Episode 13, A Full House for Christmas. Tony was slated to play Louis De Palma's brother, who comes to visit Louis, but refuses to visit their mother. Well, when Andy came to the set, he was in character as Tony, with 2 prostitutes on his arms, and wreaked havoc. Shouting and throwing a temper tantrum on the set, in character, Tony was escorted off the studio lot by security guards. And not only was Tony fired from the show and replaced by actor Richard Forangy, but they dropped the Tony Clifton clauses from Andy's contract. However, as the master showman, it was Andy that won out in the end, as the shots of Tony getting kicked off the lot made the papers. When people think of Nick at Nite, they generally think of old sitcoms, but along with those creative pre-commercial bumpers, they also had a couple original shows. First up, The Adventures of Milkman.
Sent forth on a quest from TV land,
bringing truth and justice in his hand, delivering milk and hope to a world gone sour.
It's Milkman.
The Adventures of Milkman were shorts shown between commercials and followed a 1950s-style milkman driving around solving problems and giving wholesome advice to customers on his milk delivery route. The shorts came from the mind of Tom Hill, the creative director at Nick at Nite and later TV Land. Tom was behind all those classic Nick at Nite bumpers, including Dixie the Nick at Nite Pixie.
Whether you like color or black and white, you get good TV with Nick at Nite.
Grand reruns.
His work was creative, but also strange, as it juxtaposed then contemporary television with the classic sitcoms that made up the channel's identity. While Tom Hill didn't have anything to do with Nickelodeon's Adventures of Pete and Pete, shorts like The Adventures of Milkman had a very similar surreal vibe, and I always look forward to them when they aired.
Waiting for someone?
Not anymore. I was waiting for Buck, my prom date.
Prom? Aren't you a little, well, old?
I've been waiting for him for 17 years.
Wow, this Buck must be a pretty special fella.
I loved him, Milkman, but I've got to get on with my life.
Don't give up. Let's take a spin around the block. Maybe you got the address wrong. That wouldn't be your young man, would it?
Buck!
Louise? That prom dance is over. But you two go out and have a good time tonight. On me.
Gosh, thanks, Milkman.
Brought to you by Nick at Nite, dedicated to better living through television.
Another Nick at Nite original followed a 90s teen who finds himself interacting with his favorite 1950s sitcom, and him and his family have a profound influence on their lives. No, not Pleasantville, but Hi, Honey, I'm Home. Yeah, with the popularity of movies like Pleasantville, or more recently shows like WandaVision, I'm surprised Hi, Honey, I'm Home has kind of been forgotten. Hi, Honey, I'm Home ran from July 19th, 1991 to July 12th, 1992 on Nick at Nite and ABC at the same time, with ABC dropping it after the first 6 episodes. The show is shot at Nickelodeon Studios at Universal Studios Orlando, Florida. The Nielsen's are a 1950s American sitcom family who participate in the sitcom relocation program when their show gets taken out of syndication and gets sent to live in 1990s suburbia. The only one who knows who they really are is the teenage son of the family living next door, named Mike, whose very 90s mother befriends the very 50s Honey. As 1950s societal norms and gender roles are questioned through a 90s lens, it can come across as a little bit preachy. But there are clever ideas, like the Nielsen's remote control that turns everything to black and white and back again, called the Turnerizer, or when the Nielsens learn about sex so they push their double beds together. The show was the first role for a few familiar faces. The Nielsen's teenage daughter, Babs, was played by Julie Benz, who went on to play Rita on Dexter. Mike's brother Skunk is played by Eric Kushnick, who's remembered by fans of The Adventures of Pete and Pete as the villainous Pit Stain. Actually, in the original pilot, Skunk was played by Backstreet Boy A.J. McLean. And a few years later, when the Backstreet Boys got big, Nickelodeon aired the pilot as part of a Before They Were Stars showcase. Each episode of Hi Honey I'm Home also featured guest appearances by beloved classic sitcom actors reprising their famous roles, like Al Lewis as Grandpa Munster, Dwayne Hickman as Dobie Gillis, and Barbara Billingsley as June Cleaver. While it can be a bit awkward here and there, and somehow the 90s fashions are more dated than the 50s fashions at times, Hi Honey I'm Home is a loving homage for any frequent visitor to TV land. Usually at the end of these videos I talk about the channel's decline, rebrands, or being sold off here and there. But no, Nick at Night is still alive and well. It's been a few years since I've watched regular TV, but from what I gather, the programming now is mostly more modern shows that I can't say have really reached the nostalgia levels of the shows aired during Nick at Night's heyday. I mostly watch DVDs or streaming now, and have most of the classic shows in my collection. But it was nice to learn that Nick at Night is still on the air. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my look back at growing up with Nick at Night. Leave a comment if you have an old sitcom that you really like. If you'd like to be kept up to date as to when I release a new video, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified, hit that bell as well. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next time on Brian's Things That Are Cool.